The mission brief called it an asset recovery. That was the lie they used when they wanted you to stop imagining faces. The real name of the station was Kestrel, though it hadn't been spoken out loud in NASA halls for 2 decades. Officially, it never existed. Unofficially, it was the reason half the senior engineers at Johnson kept a bottle in their desk drawer. I didn't hear about Kestrel until the morning they decided to resurrect it. They woke me before dawn with a secure call that didn't introduce itself. It simply asked if I was alone, then told me to drive to Building 30 at Johnson Space Center and leave my phone in the car. I'd been a flight commander long enough to recognize the tone. Not urgent in the way of an explosion or a fire. Urgent in the way of a secret that has started to rot. Inside Building 30, the air always felt filtered twice. The hallways were too clean, the lights too white, the silence too practiced. A guard checked my badge and didn't smile. They led me down a corridor I hadn't seen in years, past doors without labels, past cameras nested in corners like insects. The briefing room was small, no windows, a long table, 3 men in suits and 1 woman in a flight jacket who looked like she'd slept in it. She was the only one who met my eyes like a human being. "Commander Eli Mercer," she said. "Thank you for coming in on short notice." I had never told anyone in that building that my middle name was Elias. I didn't correct her. A projector hummed and threw an image onto the wall, a space station against black, its silhouette skeletal and wrong, like a spine stripped of meat. The station's central truss looked twisted, not broken. Twisted, as if something had rotated it slowly over time. Radiators extended like thin ribs. 1 solar array was missing entirely. The other was folded at an angle that made my teeth hurt. "Kestrel Station," the woman said. "Lost contact 20 years ago. There was no date on the slide. No mission patch. No crew list." One of the suited men slid a folder toward me. It was thick enough to be a weapon. The cover bore a classification marking I hadn't seen since my military days. "Before you open that," he said, "you need to understand the parameters. This is not a rescue." I kept my hands flat on the table. "Then why am I here?" "Because we're sending people anyway," the woman answered. "And we want them to come back." That was the first time I felt the hairs on my arms lift, not from fear, from the quiet certainty that someone in the room didn't believe what she was saying. She tapped a remote. The next slide appeared. Telemetry charts, decayed and uneven, like a heartbeat recorded through water. Power readings, pressure readings, heat signatures. "Kestrel has been broadcasting," she said. "Very faintly. Not a distress call, not a beacon. It's activity. Something on board is still functioning." A second suited man leaned forward. His tie was too perfect, his posture too stiff. "We detected station-keeping adjustments, minor thrust corrections. That shouldn't be possible." "Unless an automated system kicked in," I said. "It would have run out of propellant years ago," the woman replied. "Unless someone made it last." The room went quiet in a way that felt rehearsed. I opened the folder. The first page was a cropped photograph of a crew, 6 people floating in a module, smiling for the camera. Their faces had that early-era optimism, the kind engineers and scientists wore before space had the chance to teach them humility. Under the photo were names, roles, dates, every one of them blacked out with thick bars except the station commander, Dr. Rina Sato, station commander. I turned the page. Incident summary. The last log entries. The day the station went silent. No fire. No collision. No explosive decompression. Just a gradual cascade of anomalies that ended in a final clipped transmission. The transcript was short enough to memorize. "Oxygen recycler is stable, but we're seeing movement in the maintenance crawl. No, I need everyone to stay in. Do not open." The rest was a flat line. I looked up. Why wasn't this public? A third man, older, with the calm of someone who had signed too many denial letters, answered without hesitation, because it couldn't be explained. The woman in the flight jacket, her nameplate read Voss, clicked the remote again. A new image appeared, a thermal scan of Kestrel, colors smeared across its modules like bruises. "Here's why you're leading this," she said, and the word leading landed heavy. 3 days ago, Kestrel's orbit shifted. Not by much, but enough to tell us it's not dead weight anymore. Something nudged it. I stared at the heat map. There were hotspots inside the station that shouldn't exist after 20 years of abandonment. Long, thin warmth patterns that ran along walls like veins. "What's the objective?" I asked. Voss's jaw tightened. "You dock, you board, you retrieve the data core and the black box. You do not attempt to recover remains." One of the suited men added, "And you do not attempt to access anything beyond the main hub." That was the kind of instruction that makes a pilot's stomach sink, because it meant someone already had, once. "And if there are survivors?" I asked, though I didn't know why I bothered. Nobody answered immediately. Then Voss spoke, carefully. "Commander, after 20 years, anyone alive up there wouldn't be alive in any way we would recognize." I should have pressed her. I should have demanded the medical projections, the failure models, the psychological profiles. But the room's silence carried a weight that didn't invite questions. Instead, I asked the one thing I could anchor myself to. "Who's on my team?" Voss slid another page across the table. 5 names, clear and unredacted. Flight engineer, EVA specialist, systems tech, medic, comms officer, all sharp, all experienced, all the kind of people who laugh too easily before launches because laughter keeps the fear from finding a place to sit. "You'll fly up on the Artemis retrieval vehicle," Voss said. "Minimal crew, minimal exposure. We get in, we get out." "And if Kestrel is occupied?" I asked. The older man finally leaned in, his voice low. "Then you will treat it as a contamination event." I felt my mouth go dry. "Biological?" He didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it. The meeting ended the way classified meetings always end, with signatures, warnings, and a quiet reminder that you've just stepped into a story you won't be allowed to tell. In the prep hangar later that day, my team gathered near the suit racks. Their voices bounced off metal and composite like bright coins dropped into a well. Lieutenant Harper, our EVA lead, cracked a joke about ghost stations and haunted bolts. Someone laughed. Someone else pretended not to. I watched them and felt something I hated. Protectiveness edged with dread. Because I'd read the last transmission again, just to make sure my mind hadn't invented the words. Movement in the maintenance crawl. It wasn't the kind of thing you say during equipment failure. Not unless you've seen something you can't label. We launched 2 nights later, riding a pillar of controlled violence into the black. Up there, Earth was a calm lie, blue and white and impossibly gentle, as if nothing had ever screamed beneath its atmosphere. The retrieval vehicle handled smoothly, systems nominal, comms clean. My team ran checklists with the easy competence of people who'd done this too many times to romanticize it. Kestrel came into view at the edge of our approach corridor like a carcass hung in vacuum. Even from a distance, it didn't look abandoned. It looked arranged, as if something had maintained the station's posture, keeping it angled just so, presenting its docking ring like an offered wrist. Harper whistled softly over the channel. Not a sound effect, just breath shaped into disbelief. "It's intact." "Mostly," my engineer, Soto, no relation to Dr. Sato, murmured. "I'm seeing scarring along the truss, micrometeoroid impacts. But why is the hub warm?" I stared at the thermal overlay on my display. The heat patterns weren't random. They ran in lines that suggested circulation. Not air. Something else. I kept my voice steady. "Final approach. Everyone, keep it professional. No freelancing, no hero moves. Copy, the team replied in a chorus that was too confident. We matched spin. We aligned. The docking ring filled the viewport, pitted and dark. A faint film coated it, like frost, except the numbers said it wasn't cold enough for frost. Our latches engaged. The moment the seals met, my headset filled with a soft, steady tone. The station's internal system handshake, ancient protocol recognizing us as authorized hardware. That tone should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like a door unlocking from the inside. Hard dock confirmed, Soto said. I waited for the next expected step. Pressure equalization. The slow climb, the green lights. But the pressure began equalizing immediately. Too fast, too eager. Hold, I snapped. That's not... The numbers stabilized. The system behaved. No alarms. Just a smooth, cooperative welcome. Harper's voice came again, quieter now. Commander, the inner hatch indicators. They're active. I looked. The station's side showed power. Status lights. Internal atmosphere. Kestrel wasn't dead, and it wasn't sleeping. I put my gloved hand on the hatch wheel, feeling the vibration through layers of polymer and pressure seal. It wasn't the vehicle trembling. It was the station, a low, continuous tremor that suggested something moving far inside its bones. I swallowed and keyed the channel. Team, helmets sealed, weapons. We didn't carry weapons, not officially. I corrected myself. Tools secured, tethers ready. Once we open this hatch, nobody goes anywhere alone. 5 acknowledgements came back. Then I began turning the wheel. The hatch released with a gentle shift, like it had been waiting for my grip. And beyond it, the station's interior was dark, except for a thin line of emergency lighting along the floor, glowing with the patience of something that had never stopped watching the door. The first breath I took inside Kestrel tasted wrong. Not poisonous, not stale, just thin, like the air had learned a different definition of what lungs should need. My suit readouts insisted the mix was within tolerances. Oxygen partial pressure acceptable, CO2 scrubbers functional. Numbers can be honest and still fail to tell the truth. The emergency floor lights drew a narrow path into the hub module. Everything beyond that glow was a blackened curvature of bulkheads and conduits. The station smelled faintly metallic, and under it, something like warmed plastic, as if a circuit board had been cooking for years. Comms check, I said. Loud and clear, Patel replied. He was our communications officer, calm voice, steady breath. The kind of guy who could talk down a panicking astronaut with nothing but cadence. Environmental readings match the vehicle, Soto said. Pressure stable. Temperature inside hub is 23 Celsius. Harper spoke next, softer. That's room temperature. Yeah, I said. It shouldn't be. We moved as a unit through the hatch, boots magnet clicking to the deck plates. Again, no sound effect, just the sensation of the magnets catching, the tiny pull through my soles. Our helmet lamps cut pale cones through the dark. Dust drifted in slow motion, glittering like fine ash. The hub was cluttered with the ghosts of routine work. Velcroed checklists, handholds scuffed by gloves, a floating pen trapped behind a mesh panel. A coffee pouch still clung to a wall bracket, flattened and brown with age. If you told me the crew had stepped out an hour ago, I might have believed you. I didn't. Because the station felt occupied, not by motion or noise, by intention. Like walking into a room where a conversation stopped a second before you entered. Patel's lamp swept across a bank of monitors. Those screens are live. The monitors glowed with dim standby graphics. Old interface elements from a software era NASA liked to pretend had died with floppy disks. One screen flickered as if it couldn't decide whether to show status data or hide it. It settled on a line of text I couldn't read at first. Harper leaned closer. It's looping. Same string every 10 seconds. I moved in beside her, careful not to bump a cable harness that had been zip-tied into place. The text was blocky, low resolution. Welcome home. I stared at it long enough that my brain tried to interpret it as a joke. Like a programmer's Easter egg. Like a morale message left for the crew. But none of the names in the file would ever use that phrasing. And none of them would leave it running for 20 years. Patel, I said. Pull the last broadcast packet we received from Kestrel. Compare handshake signatures. Make sure this is the same station. He paused. Commander, you think it might not be? I think, I said. We don't assume anything, not even our own comfort. Soto was already at a junction panel, gloved fingers testing access points. Main bus still has power. Someone rerouted around the damaged truss. That's not automated behavior. Copy, I said. We stick to plan. Hub only. Data core and black box. Harper's visor angled toward a side corridor. The emergency lights didn't reach that far, but I could see the outline of a hatchway and a narrow strip of darkness beyond. Maintenance crawl access, she said. The words from the transcript rose in my head like an involuntary memory. Movement in the maintenance crawl. Not today, I said. We don't go hunting stories. We advanced deeper into the hub. A central table floated bolted to the floor with restraint straps hanging loose like dead vines. Above it, a mesh storage net held items that made my throat tighten. A child's drawing laminated into plastic. A small stuffed animal clipped to a handrail. A paper calendar with months that ended 20 years ago. Who brings a stuffed animal to a station? Harper asked. Someone with a kid on Earth, Patel answered, and the way he said it made it worse, like he'd accidentally touched a bruise. Soto located the data core access panel on the far wall. Here, give me a minute. I watched her work, trying to keep my breathing slow. My helmet's internal audio magnified every exhale, every tiny movement. In the dark corners, the station swallowed light like it was hungry for it. Patel moved toward another monitor bank. Commander, I'm seeing stored logs on local, not transmitted. Do you want me to? Don't open anything that isn't required, I said. He hesitated. What if the logs explain what killed them? Harper asked, not accusing, just curious in the way brave people can be. Or what happened? My mouth felt dry inside the suit. The brief told us not to access beyond the main hub. That instruction wasn't given because of boredom. Patel's shoulders rose slightly. He backed away from the terminal. Copy. Soto's hand stopped. Wait. What? I asked. She pointed at the access panel. The screws were missing. Not stripped, not broken, removed. The panel sat slightly ajar, like someone had opened it, and then closed it, just enough to appear untouched. Someone's been in here, she said. Harper gave a short exhale. We're the first boarding in 20 years. Soto's voice sharpened. Then we're not the only ones. I keyed my mic. Everyone, lights on, full sweep. Look for physical signs, footmarks, glove prints, disturbed dust. Patel's lamp panned across the deck. The dust layer was thin, inconsistent, like it had been brushed by air currents that shouldn't exist in microgravity. Harper crouched, her suit joints creaking softly, and shone her beam along a seam. There, she said, drag marks. My pulse kicked. From what? Harper didn't answer immediately. Her light tracked the mark, an elongated smear that led toward the side corridor. Toward the crawl, she finally said. I stepped between her and the corridor. We are not splitting up. Soto refocused on the data core. I can pull it without leaving hub, but it's going to take. A faint vibration rippled through the floor, subtle enough that if you weren't standing still, you'd miss it. But I was standing still. Harper felt it too. Her helmet turned toward the ceiling. "Thrusters?" Patel asked. Soto checked her wrist display. "No, attitude control quiet." The vibration came again. Not rhythmic, not mechanical, like pressure moving through a long pipe. Then, just at the edge of my helmet lamp's reach, I saw something shift in the dark. Not a full figure, not a face, just a slight reorientation of shadow along a wall conduit, as if something had uncurled and settled into a new position. I stared until my eyes hurt. "Commander?" Patel said. "You see that?" I didn't answer, because if I did, it would make it real. Soto's tools clicked softly as she worked. "Core extraction initiating. 30 seconds. "Patel," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Watch the hatch. Harper, cover Soto." Harper moved, deliberate, positioning herself with a clear sightline on the corridor and the hatch. She held a cutter tool in her right hand. Not a weapon, but if you swing anything hard enough in a suit, it becomes one. We waited. The station remained silent. That silence became its own sound, pressing in against my helmet like deep water. My suit fans murmured softly, circulating air. Somewhere far in the station, something made a tiny tick as metal cooled or warmed, or shifted. Soto's display flashed. "Core is loose. Bagging." She slid a black reinforced data canister into a retrieval pouch and sealed it. The moment the seal engaged, the hub lights flickered, just once, then brightened slightly. "Did you?" Patel began. "No," Soto said. Her voice had the edge of someone trying to deny a thought. The monitor that had displayed "Welcome Home" went blank. Then it rewrote itself, line by line, slow like someone typing with a gloved finger. "Do not take it." My heart hit my ribs. Harper stepped closer to the monitor. That's active input." Patel's voice rose a fraction. "From where? No uplink, no external comms." Soto held the pouch tighter, as if grip could anchor the universe. "We didn't connect to any system. I didn't even jack into the port." The text changed again. "It belongs to us." I felt the station's temperature shift, barely, like a breath. A subtle warming along my neck ring, my suit's thermal compensation responding to a new ambient. "Back to the hatch," I said. "Now, no debate." We began moving, slow, controlled, refusing to let panic make us sloppy. That's when Patel stopped. Not because he wanted to, because he couldn't. His boot had snagged on something, an exposed cable looped across the deck. He jerked his foot, trying to free it, and his center of mass shifted. In microgravity, balance is a lie you maintain by habit. Patel rotated slightly, one hand reaching for a handhold, and the dark behind him moved. A shape detached from the shadowed corridor, like a thought becoming matter. It was tall, but wrong in proportion, limbs too long, joints bending with a soft inevitability. It didn't rush. It didn't lunge. It simply arrived at Patel's side with the unhurried certainty of something that had practiced in silence for years. My lamp caught it for half a second. Skin that wasn't skin, pale, semi-translucent, stretched tight over anatomy that looked rearranged. A face flattened, features reduced, mouthless. Eye sockets not empty, but filled with a reflective film that caught my beam and threw it back. No expression, no emotion, just function. Patel's body stiffened. He didn't scream. He didn't even inhale sharply. His helmet light blinked once, as if his suit had registered a sudden change in pressure at the neck seal. Then his comms went dead. Harper's cutter tool lifted, but she hesitated because Patel was between her and it. And in this environment, one wrong strike could kill him faster than whatever was holding him. I didn't hesitate. I launched forward, pushing off the deck with a controlled burst, grabbing Patel's harness and yanking him back toward me. The thing didn't fight for him. It let him go. Patel floated into my chest plate, limp, his arms drifting upward like a sleeping man's. "Patel!" I barked into the channel. "Patel! Respond!" Nothing. His visor was clear, no blood, no visible trauma. His suit readouts still displayed pressure, oxygen. But his eyes were wide, fixed on nothing. Like whatever had been inside him had been turned off, without ceremony. Harper's voice trembled, controlled but breaking at the edges. "Commander, what did that?" I turned my lamp back toward the corridor. The darkness was empty again, as if it had never moved at all. Then the monitor at the far wall flashed one last message. One down. In training, they tell you what panic looks like. They show you videos of astronauts hyperventilating inside a simulator, gloves slapping at straps, eyes wild behind visors. They teach you to recognize it early so you can drown it before it takes the mission down with it. What they don't tell you is how panic can be silent, how it can sit in a person like a switch flipped to off. Patel floated against my suit, his body light and wrong in my grip. His chest still rose, shallow and automatic, like the suit was breathing for him, even if he wasn't choosing to. A thin fog began to form along the lower edge of his visor, then cleared as his suit fans corrected humidity. Alive on paper, empty in practice. "Med," I said, voice tight. "Klein, I need you in here now." Dr. Klein's reply came from our vehicle channel, delayed a fraction by the hub's shielding. "Copy, I'm at the hatch. What's the situation?" "Patel's unresponsive," I said. "No visible trauma." "Comms dead." A pause. "How?" I didn't answer that. If I said it out loud, the station would hear the story shaping itself, and I had this irrational certainty that Kestrel liked stories. Harper moved with me, guiding Patel toward the docking hatch where Klein was waiting. Her posture was rigid, cutter tool still in her hand. She kept her lamp trained on the corridor, like she expected the darkness to peel itself free again. Soto stayed by the data pouch, clutching it like it was her last remaining organ. She'd gone quiet, not calm quiet, holding her breath quiet. We reached the hatch. Klein pulled himself through, his medic pack strapped tight to his chest. His eyes flicked over Patel in one smooth scan, then to me. "Bring him into the vehicle," he said. "We need stable light and space." I nodded. We eased Patel through the hatch, careful with the seals. The retrieval vehicle felt suddenly small, like a lifeboat tied to a corpse. Klein anchored Patel to a restraint station and began running diagnostics. He checked pupil response with a pen light, clipped sensors to suit ports, listened through the suit's medical interface. "No hypoxia," he muttered. "No CO2 spike, heart rate normal, temperature normal. He should be talking." "His comms cut," Soto said from the hatch. Like the suit lost him. Klein didn't look up. "Suit systems look intact. The mic and transmitter are functional. It's like his neural signal isn't telling the suit to route audio." Harper's voice came thinly over the internal channel. "Like the man inside isn't answering the phone." Klein finally glanced at me, and the question in his eyes was sharper than any spoken sentence. "What aren't you saying?" Before I could respond, the vehicle's internal speakers emitted a soft tone, an incoming transmission request. Not from Mission Control, from Kestrel. Soto stiffened at the hatch. "Commander, the station is pinging. Our comms relay." I stepped to the console, fingers hovering over the interface. "Blocked or open?" "Auto-routing," Soto said, and her voice shook in a way I hadn't heard from her in all the years I'd flown with engineers. "It's using legacy handshake protocols. It's acting like it has authority," Klein said. "We don't accept anything from..." The transmission opened itself. A burst of static filled the cabin. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a thin, clean hiss, like a wire being shaved. Then a voice came through. Patel's voice. "Commander," it said, calm, perfect cadence. "We should not leave." My skin tightened along my spine. I looked at Patel's motionless body, his eyes fixed on the ceiling as if he was staring through aluminum into the stars. Klein snapped, "That's not possible." The voice continued, still Patel. "You brought the core. It is part of us." Harper whispered, "Eli." I didn't respond to her. I responded to the transmission. "Identify yourself." A pause, too long to be a human's conversational pause. Too measured, like a machine considering how to imitate uncertainty. "We are crew," Patel's voice said. "We are Kestrel." I felt my breathing get too fast. I forced it down. Slow inhale, slow exhale, the ritual of control. "Where is the crew?" Another pause. Then, "Here." The speakers clicked, and the transmission ended. Patel's body twitched once in his restraints. Just once. Not a seizure, not a convulsion. A deliberate, minimal movement, like someone testing a joint for responsiveness. Klein leaned in, hands hovering over Patel's chest. "Patel? Can you hear me?" Patel's eyes shifted. They found Klein. They held him. Then his gaze slid past Klein, settling on me. His lips moved slightly inside the helmet. No sound came through comms, but the motion was clear. He mouthed a single word. "Run!" His eyes widened, and something inside him seemed to collapse again. His pupils blew out. The suit readout spiked once, heart rate jumping, then leveled back to normal, as if his body had been corrected. Klein backed away, face pale. That wasn't neurological. That was permission. I didn't like the way he said permission. Like Patel was a locked door that something else had briefly opened. "Okay," I said. "We're done. We abort. We undock." Harper's voice steadied. She was afraid, but she was functional. "We can't leave the core behind now. It's already in our pouch." "That's fine," I said. "We take it and we go." Soto swallowed. "Commander." "The docking ring. Look." She angled her helmet cam so my display could see what she saw. The docking interface on Kestrel's side, where our seals met, had changed. The film I'd noticed earlier wasn't frost. It was a living layer, thin and translucent, spread across the metal like skin. It pulsed, faintly, contracting in slow waves. Where it touched our vehicle's ring, it had begun to creep, microscopic tendrils searching, tasting. "No," I said, but it came out like a plea. Klein said, "That's biological contamination. We need to..." The vehicle shook, a gentle, single jolt, not an impact, not a collision, a deliberate lock. The docking clamps on Kestrel's side engaged deeper with a mechanical grind, pulling our vehicle tighter. Soto's fingers flew across the console. "I didn't command that. Kestrel's overriding the latches. Manual release," I said. "Already trying," she snapped. "It's ignoring me." Another vibration passed through the hull. This one felt like something crawling along the docking collar, pressure migrating in a ring. Harper's voice rose just a touch. "Eli, if it can override docking, it can override life support." Klein looked at Patel again. "It might already be doing that." I forced my focus, back to command tasks. "Soto, can you sever docking power from our side? Physically cut it?" Soto hesitated. "If we cut power while the clamps are engaged, we might jam the ring permanently." "And if we don't," I said, "we become part of Kestrel." Harper moved toward the hatch. "I'll go. I can reach the external harness." "No," I said. "Nobody goes back in there alone." She met my eyes through her visor. "Then come with me." I hated that she was right. The station had already proven it could take one of us in seconds without sound. It wasn't about bravery. It was about numbers. "Klein," I said, "keep Patel secured. Monitor him. If he moves again, if he tries to..." I couldn't finish that sentence. If Patel tried to what? Speak? Kill? Become an instrument? Klein nodded anyway. He understood the unspoken. Soto clipped the data pouch to her suit's chest. "I'm coming too," she said. "No," I said. "You stay here and keep working the clamp release." Her eyes flashed. "If it takes you, I want to be there to see how." I didn't have time to argue. Harper and I re-entered Kestrel first, pulling ourselves through the hatch. The hub lights seemed brighter than before, as if the station had kindly adjusted to our fear. The air tasted warmer. The floor vibration felt steadier, like a heartbeat settling into rhythm. And the corridor, the maintenance crawl access, was no longer dark. A thin line of emergency lighting extended into it now, illuminated as if inviting us in. Harper kept her cutter tool raised. I kept my lamp sweeping, unwilling to trust any shadow. We moved toward the docking collar access panel on Kestrel's side, where we could cut power to the clamps. The panel should have been sealed behind a maintenance hatch. It was open. The screws were placed neatly in a row on the floor, aligned with a precision that felt like mockery. Harper whispered, "It wants us to do this." I didn't answer. I reached into the panel with my gloved hand, feeling for the power conduit. Something brushed my wrist, soft, light, like a strand of hair in water. I snapped my hand back. Harper's lamp caught it, a thin filament extending from the panel's interior, retracting quickly, vanishing into the darkness behind the wires. "Eli," Harper said. Her voice trembled despite her discipline. "There's something in the walls." The station's monitor in the hub flickered, as if listening. Then, in that same slow, typed rhythm, 2 down. I spun toward the vehicle hatch. For half a second, nothing made sense. Then my brain assembled the image. Soto was floating just inside the hatchway, one hand gripping the frame. Her body was rigid, angled wrong. Her helmet lamp pointed at the ceiling, and behind her, clinging to the hatch rim like a pale spider, was the thing. One of the crew, or what the crew had become, its elongated fingers wrapped around her, neck ring, not crushing, just touching. Soto's eyes were wide, pleading, fixed on me. She didn't make a sound. Her comms were already dead. Harper moved first. Not fast, not panicked. Fast is how you rupture a seal or miss a tether clip and die stupidly. She moved with the careful violence of someone who knows exactly how fragile the world is inside a suit. She grabbed Soto's harness strap with her left hand and yanked, pulling Soto's body away from the hatch rim. At the same time, she swung the cutter tool up, not to strike, but to wedge its blunt edge between Soto's neck ring and the pale fingers wrapped around it. The creature didn't fight her. That was what made my stomach turn. It released Soto like it had merely been checking a latch. Soto floated toward me, slow and helpless. Her eyes were still wide, still alive, but her pupils looked wrong. Too dilated, like her body had dumped every last chemical into her bloodstream and then stopped. Her suit's comm icon remained grey. No audio, no carrier signal. Harper's lamp tracked the thing. It clung to the hatch rim upside down, limbs folded close, almost fetal. In the narrow glow, its surface looked less like skin and more like a membrane stretched over rewired anatomy. There was no mouth, no obvious nostrils. Its face was smooth in places where evolution should have left chaos. It tilted its head toward us. The motion was delicate, curious, like it was studying how we reacted. My hand went to the hatch wheel behind Soto, instinct screaming to shut it, seal Kestrel off, retreat into the vehicle, cut loose, pray. But the docking collar tremor returned, stronger now. The living film at the ring pulsed against metal. The station was already wrapped around our escape route like a hand around a throat. "Soto," I said, forcing my voice into the internal team channel, even though I knew she couldn't respond. "Soto, blink twice if you understand me." She blinked once, slow. Then her gaze slid past me, toward the hub monitor. Harper followed her eyes. The monitor's text had changed again. "She is with us." Harper's breathing quickened. I could hear it in the slight distortion of her mic pickup. "Eli, we need to..." Soto's hand rose. Weak, delayed, not a conscious gesture at first. Then her fingers pointed at Harper. I froze. "Harper," I said, "back off." Harper instinctively pushed away, a gentle burst that moved her a meter back. Her cutter tool remained raised. Her lamp stayed trained on the pale thing on the hatch rim. Soto's arm continued pointing, stiffening, as if invisible strings had tightened. Then her glove opened, and a thin, translucent filament drifted out from between her fingers. It wasn't a wire. It wasn't part of her suit. It was biological, semi-clear, faintly opalescent, like the inside of an eye. It floated in the air between us, moving as if it could feel currents that didn't exist. It drifted toward Harper. Harper jerked back, but in microgravity, you can't retreat fast without pushing off something, and there was nothing but air. Her tether line tightened behind her, halting her momentum. The filament brushed her suit's chest plate, not hard, just a touch, and Harper's comm icon went grey. "Harper!" I snapped. No response. Her body stiffened, legs slightly bent at the knees, arms held oddly close to her sides. Her lamp stayed on, still aimed at the creature, but the beam began to tremble as her wrist twitched, small, uncontrolled motions. My mouth went dry. This was how it hunted. Not with violence, with contact, with switches. The pale thing on the hatch rim uncurled. It moved closer, slow enough to feel inevitable. Its fingers extended, not grasping, but reaching with the confidence of something that knew our limitations. I grabbed Soto by her harness and shoved her back toward the vehicle hatch with more force than necessary. She floated away, spinning slightly, her eyes never leaving Harper. Then I pushed toward Harper, catching her shoulder and turning her gently, forcing her lamp away from the creature so it couldn't track us in its own reflective film. "Harper," I said into my mic, then again, louder. "Harper, can you hear me?" Her eyes were open. They looked at me. And I saw something in them that didn't belong there. Focus without recognition, like a camera lens adjusting without a person behind it. Her lips moved inside her helmet. No sound. She mouthed 2 words, silently. "Not me." Then her head snapped toward my left shoulder, fast. The pale creature had moved again. It wasn't in front of us anymore. It was beside us, having traversed the hatch rim with a smooth climbing motion that made no sense in my mind's map of the station. It clung to a handrail, inverted, its body folded, as if weight meant nothing and bone had been redesigned for this environment. It reached toward my neck ring. I threw my arm up, blocking with my forearm plate. Its fingers touched the composite and slid, testing the seal like a thief testing a lock. A prickle of cold ran through my arm where it touched. Not temperature, sensation, like static under skin. I shoved Harper away from me, pushing her back toward the hatch. Her tether line helped guide her, but she moved like a marionette, limbs lagging half a beat behind in tension. Then I turned my body and slammed my cutter tool, mine, not Harper's, into the open access panel, not to cut the creature, to cut power. The tool's blade arced, bright and silent. It bit into a thick conduit and severed it clean. A spark flashed behind the panel, briefly lighting the interior like a lightning strike in a storm cloud. The station shuddered, the hub lights flickered, the monitor went black, and for the first time since we boarded, I heard something that wasn't my own breathing. A low vibration, deeper than before, rolled through the bulkheads, as if the station itself had exhaled in irritation. Soto's voice crackled suddenly through my suit speakers, distorted and broken. "Commander! Doc!" Her transmission cut. Then Klein's voice, sharp, strained. "Eli, the docking clamps just—" Static swallowed him. I yanked myself toward the vehicle hatch with a desperate burst, dragging Harper by her harness line. She didn't resist. She didn't help. She just floated, eyes wide, tracking the station's interior like she was memorizing it. We crossed the threshold. Soto was inside the vehicle, strapped into a seat, but her restraint belts were loose, like she'd been seated by someone who didn't understand why humans needed to be held in place. Her head lolled slightly. Her visor fogged and cleared in slow cycles. Klein was at the console, fingers moving fast, jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscles through his neck seal. He looked up as we entered. His eyes flicked to Harper's grey comm icon, then to my face. "It's closing," he said. "What?" I demanded. "The docking ring," he said. "The station's film, it's expanding. It's sealing around the interface. It's building a gasket." The hull groaned softly. Again, not dramatic, not Hollywood, just the real sound of stressed metal meeting pressure. Soto's eyes shifted, focusing on me. Her lips moved behind the visor. This time, her comms were still dead, but the message was clear in the shape of her mouth. "Stay." Klein saw it too. He backed away from Soto like she was radioactive. Harper drifted toward the console as if pulled by a current. Her hands settled on the panel's edge. Her eyes tracked the navigation screen with interest, like she could read it without being taught. I grabbed her wrist. "Harper, look at me." She turned her head slowly. Her pupils were dilated like Soto's had been. Her mouth moved. Soundless again. "Open it." A new tone sounded from the vehicle speakers. Not an incoming call. An automated alert. External hatch cycling. My stomach dropped. "Klein," I barked. "Kill it. Override the hatch." "I'm trying," he said, voice tight with rising panic. "It's not our command. It's coming from the station side through the docking interface." The hatch indicator light shifted from green to amber. The seal lock began to rotate, slowly, patiently, as if someone on the other side was turning the wheel with careful hands. In the widening seam, I saw the hub's emergency lights like a dim throat. And in that throat, waiting just beyond the frame, I saw more of them. Not one, not two. A cluster of pale forms clinging to the bulkhead like they belonged there, limbs folded, faces smooth, reflective films catching our cabin light and throwing it back at us. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to. They were letting the station do the work. The hatch opened another inch, and Soto, still strapped in, still silent, lifted her hand and touched the inside of her visor with 2 fingers. A gesture so intimate it made my skin crawl. Then she tapped once, twice, like she was knocking from the inside. Klein slammed his palm on the manual override panel so hard the plastic flexed. "Override rejected," the console chimed in that polite synthetic tone that always sounds smug when you're dying. The hatch wheel continued to rotate, slow, steady, like the station had all the time in the universe. I lunged for the emergency disconnect lever, an old mechanical safeguard designed for exactly one thing: separating a vehicle from something you no longer trusted. My glove wrapped around the handle, and for a moment, my mind offered relief. Physical systems don't negotiate. Metal doesn't lie. Then the lever wouldn't move. Not stuck. Held. The resistance felt organic, like trying to pull your hand from thick syrup. My eyes snapped to the docking collar viewport. The translucent film had crawled over the interface entirely now, sealing around our vehicle ring in a perfect fleshy gasket. It pulsed in slow waves. Each pulse tightened, fraction by fraction, like it was learning how to grip us. "Klein," I said, voice low. "Cut power to the docking ring. Everything. I don't care what we lose." "I already did," he said. Sweat floated in tiny beads inside his helmet, clinging to his brow line. "It's not using our power. It's..." Using us, Harper whispered. She was still by the console. Her comm icon was grey, but she spoke anyway, through the cabin speakers, through open suit-to-vehicle audio, like her suit had decided she was authorized even when she wasn't. I turned toward her. Harper, step away from the panel. Her head angled slowly, unnatural in its patience. The expression on her face wasn't blank. It was intent, like she was listening to a voice only she could hear. Behind her, Soto sat in the restraint chair, belts slack around her torso like decorative ribbons. She tilted her head and watched the widening hatch seam with something close to anticipation. Outside the hatch, the pale shapes clung in a loose cluster. They didn't crowd the opening. They didn't push. They waited. The hatch opened another inch. The air pressure remained stable. No rush of atmosphere. No alarm. Kestrel's system was matching our cabin pressure perfectly, like a predator breathing in sync with prey, so the prey won't notice the approach. Klein's voice shook. Eli, if that hatch opens fully, we don't let it, I said. I floated to the hatch and planted my boots against the inner frame, magnets clamping to the metal. I grabbed the wheel with both hands and tried to reverse it manually. It turned a fraction, then stopped, as if something on the other side had pressed a palm against it. A pale finger slid through the seam, testing the gap. It touched the inner lip of our hatch. Not violent, exploratory, like it was learning the texture of our world. I could see the finger's surface, semi-translucent, revealing faint structures beneath, tubing and lattice like modified vasculature. It was not the finger of a human being. It was the finger of something that had once been human, then rewritten in quiet. I brought my cutter tool up, thumbed it active, and placed the blade against the intruding finger. The tool's arc flared. The finger didn't flinch. I pressed harder. The blade should have sliced. It could cut through aluminum. It could cut through composite plating if you held it long enough. Instead, the finger's surface dimpled slightly around the arc, like gel around a hot wire, then reformed. No smoke, no blood, no reaction. It withdrew slowly, almost politely. Klein whispered, "It's insulated." "No," I muttered. "It's adapted." Harper drifted closer behind me. I felt it before I saw it. The subtle shift of air currents inside the cabin as her suit moved. My instincts screamed to turn around, but I couldn't leave the hatch. "Eli," she said softly, the way she used to speak to nervous rookies on their first. "Eva, we can stop fighting. We can just be quiet." I didn't look at her. "Harper, lock your boots. Stay where you are." I heard the faint click of her boots touching metal. Then nothing. No magnet sound. No compliance. Klein let out a sharp breath. "Her boots aren't engaging." I turned. Harper was floating freely, hands at her sides, like she'd forgotten magnets existed. Her eyes were wide and calm. Her mouth curved slightly. Not a smile, but the shape of understanding. Soto's head tilted toward Harper with almost approval. I pushed off the hatch frame and grabbed Harper by the shoulders. "Harper, listen to me. If you're in there, if you can hear me, blink twice." Harper blinked once, slowly, then her gaze slid toward Klein, and her hand lifted. It moved with that same delayed, puppet-like precision Soto had shown. She reached toward Klein's neck ring. Klein recoiled, pushing himself backward, bumping against a stowage rack. A pouch floated loose and bumped his helmet. "Don't touch me!" he snapped, voice cracking. Harper's hand continued moving. I caught her wrist and held it. Her strength surprised me. Not brute strength, but perfect leverage. She pushed against my grip with an effortless pressure that felt less like muscle and more like hydraulics. My wrist ached inside the glove. "Klein," I barked. "Sedate her." Klein hesitated. "In a suit, through the port. I can try." "Try," I said. Klein pulled a medical injector from his pack, the kind designed for emergency suit interface sedation. He aligned it to Harper's suit port. Harper's head turned toward him. Her lips moved. No sound. But Klein's eyes widened as if he heard her anyway. He froze. His injector drifted slightly off alignment. "Klein?" I snapped. His gaze remained locked on Harper. His pupils dilated fast, like a camera aperture opening. Then his comm icon flickered. Grey. His mouth fell open, slightly. No words came. He exhaled once, shallow, and stopped moving. My blood went cold. "No, no, no!" Harper's wrist twisted in my grip. Her hand slipped free, not by force, but by precision, and her fingertips brushed Klein's chest plate. Just a touch. Klein's body drifted gently, limp, eyes open, breath shallow, like Patel had been. 3 of us now. 1 functional. Me. The hatch behind me continued opening. Slow, patient. The wheel rotated under invisible hands. I spun back toward the hatch and threw my body against it, bracing with boots and shoulders. I reached for the emergency manual clamp on our side. Another mechanical backup, then stopped. Because the pale forms outside the seam had changed positions. They weren't clustered anymore. They had spread along the hub corridor, clinging to walls and ceiling like folded paper. 4, 5, maybe more. Hard to count in the dim emergency light. Their reflective eye films caught our cabin light and returned it in broken glints. They were not rushing the hatch because they didn't need to. They already had my crew. They were using my crew like keys. Soto's head lifted again. Her mouth moved, silent, but the cabin speakers suddenly carried her voice. Not through comms, but through the vehicle audio, as if the station had decided she could speak now. "Commander," Soto's voice said gently, "you're hurting the seal." My stomach twisted. That's not Soto. Soto's lips didn't match the sound perfectly, a fraction out of sync. "Commander," the voice repeated, "you can stop. We can make it easy. Your bodies are fragile." Harper drifted closer beside Soto, her eyes fixed on me with an intensity that felt like pressure behind my forehead. The station's monitor in the hub, visible through the hatch seam, flickered back to life. New text typed itself slowly. "You are loud." The words hit me like accusation. Then, "We learned quiet," I realized. Then what the station had been doing for 20 years. Not just surviving, practicing, learning where humans panic, learning how humans communicate, learning that the fastest kill is not a puncture or a scream, but a silence spread like infection. And it had waited until we brought it something it couldn't produce itself. A way out, a fresh set of systems, fresh bodies. My fingers tightened around the hatch frame until they ached. I forced myself to think like a commander again, not a terrified man. "What does it want?" I demanded, not to Soto, not to Harper, into the cabin air, toward the station itself. The hatch stopped opening. For the first time, it paused mid-motion. A beat, a consideration. Then the speakers crackled. Patel's voice again, calm and clinical. "We want to continue." "Continue what?" I spat. A longer pause, and I pictured something thinking behind the walls, slow and patient, assembling words the way a child assembles a sentence. "We changed," Patel's voice said. "The station helped. The station is us, but we are incomplete." My throat tightened. "Incomplete how?" "We need motion," the voice said. "We need reach. We need to spread quiet." The hatch wheel turned a fraction again, almost casually, as if the station was reminding me that negotiation was optional. "We will wear your names," the voice added softly. "We will use your doors." Harper drifted closer. Her gloved hand lifted. This time, she didn't reach for Klein. She reached for me. Her fingertips brushed my shoulder plate. A prickle of cold raced up my neck and behind my eyes. My comm icon flickered. Once, then steadied. Not grey. Not yet. I exhaled slowly, fighting the sudden urge to relax, to let my muscles go slack, to let the station take over the work of being alive. I recognized it then, like sedation without drugs, like sleep arriving on command, a quiet invitation. My vision narrowed at the edges. I forced my gaze to the vehicle's emergency toolkit, clipped near the hatch, where a small metal canister floated in a mesh pocket. Fire suppressant, aerosolized, designed for electrical fires in sealed environments. It wasn't a weapon, but it stole oxygen, and it blinded. I pushed off, reached, grabbed the canister with a shaking hand. I snapped the safety seal. Harper's eyes widened slightly, as if a part of her understood what I was about to do and didn't like it. I sprayed. A thick cloud burst into the cabin, white and swirling, instantly obscuring vision. It coated visors, consoles, and the open seam of the hatch. Alarms finally began to chirp, oxygen sensors detecting particulate contamination. Klein's limp body drifted in the cloud like a pale doll. Soto's silhouette vanished. Harper's silhouette vanished, but I kept spraying, flooding the space between our cabin and the hatch seam until the station's patient hands had nothing to see and nothing clean to breathe. In the chaos, I lunged to the hatch wheel and spun it shut with everything I had. The wheel moved. The resistance was still there, but weaker, confused. I turned and turned. The hatch sealed with a heavy click. For a moment, the only sound was my own harsh breathing and the soft, angry chirp of alarms. Then a new sound came through the hull, a slow scraping, not metal on metal, something moving along the outside of the vehicle, exploring the skin of our craft like fingertips tracing a face in the dark. The scraping continued, slow, methodical, like fingernails dragging across a door that can't decide if it wants to open. The suppressant cloud hung in the cabin, turning our lights into milky halos. My visor display threw warnings in neat little boxes, particulate density elevated, oxygen balance adjusting, filtration cycle active. The system was working hard to pretend we were fine. I didn't feel fine. I had sealed the hatch, yes, but I could still feel Kestrel through the docking collar. A faint vibration, a pressure that wasn't pressure. The sense that something outside was leaning in and listening to my heart rate like it could hear it through composite. I pushed off the hatch and drifted to the console. The suppressant film on the screen made everything hazy. I wiped it with my glove, smearing white paste and gaining a few seconds of clarity. "Soto," I said into the cabin audio, then forced myself to correct it. "Entity, you can hear me?" Nothing. Then, the speakers clicked softly and Patel's voice returned, calm and almost kind. "We can hear you, Commander." I swallowed. "Then hear this. You're not coming into my vehicle." A pause. "This vehicle is loud." I fought the wave of sleep pressing at the edges of my thoughts. It wasn't exhaustion. It was influence. Like something had laid a warm hand across my frontal lobe and was slowly pushing my eyelids down. "Why?" I demanded. "Why kill them? Why take them?" Patel's voice answered, measured. "Because they were moving. Because they were opening doors. Because they were not quiet." "Quiet doesn't mean dead," I snapped. Another pause. "It does here." The scraping sound stopped. Silence followed, heavy enough to feel like a physical change in cabin pressure. Then the vehicle shuddered once, slightly, as if something had climbed from one side of the hull to the other. I forced my eyes to the external camera feed. Static fuzzed it for a moment, then resolved into the docking ring view. The translucent film had spread further. It wasn't just a gasket now, it was a sleeve, wrapping the collar and creeping across our hull in thin strands. And there, clinging to the outside near the camera, was one of them. In the camera's grainy light, It looked even less human than inside. Its limbs were folded against the hull, fingers splayed wide like suction cups. Its head was tilted, reflective eye films catching the camera's infrared and turning its face into a pale mirror. It lifted a hand, not to wave, to place its palm against the hull. The moment it touched, my comm icon flickered again. Once. And I felt the cold prickle behind my eyes intensify, a sensation like internal static, like 1,000 tiny needles trying to find a nerve pathway they could claim. I gritted my teeth and tore my gaze off the feed. Focus. Tasks. Checklist. Survive. Klein, I said, forcing my voice steady, even though I knew he was gone. Status. No response. Soto and Harper drifted in the clouded cabin, restrained only by their tethers and the inertia of my earlier chaos. Their bodies were upright, almost composed, as if they'd been posed. Their visors were clear now. The filtration cycle was winning. Their eyes were open, watching. I drifted toward Klein first. His chest rose and fell, slow. His hands floated near his torso, fingers slightly curled. Alive in the same way a powered-down computer is alive, capable of being used. I clipped him to a restraint strap and tightened it, forcing his body to a fixed position. I did the same with Harper and Soto, securing them to separate handholds with quick-release ties. If the station was using them as keys, I needed to control where the keys could turn. Harper's eyes tracked my hands. When I cinched the strap across her waist, her lips moved. No sound, but I could read it. Eli. My throat tightened. A part of me wanted to answer her, to pretend she was still here, to pretend this was a medical emergency, not a possession. I didn't. I finished the straps and floated back to the console. The docking override screen still showed a hard lock. Kestrel had authority on the latches. It had wrapped itself around our physical interface and turned it into an organ. Manual separation wouldn't work, so I needed something more desperate, something the briefings never talk about unless you're already dying. I pulled up the emergency propulsion system diagnostics. Small thrusters, limited fuel, enough to adjust orbit, not enough to flee. But if I fired them while docked? I stared at the numbers, calculating forces, imagining the docking collar under torque. A wrong choice could tear the ring, could breach the hull, could turn the vehicle into a shredded tin can. But staying meant becoming a door. My hand hovered over the ignition command. The cabin speakers clicked again. This time, it wasn't Patel's voice. It was Harper's, perfectly clear. "Eli," she said softly. "Don't." My heart lurched. I turned toward her. Her body was strapped to a handhold. Her head was tilted slightly, eyes fixed on me with a familiarity that almost broke me. "Harper," I whispered before I could stop myself. She blinked once. Her lips moved in sync with the audio now. "I'm here," she said. "I'm still here." It sounded like her. It had her rhythm, the slight rasp she got when she'd been awake too long, the calm authority. My hands clenched into fists. "This is a trick," I said out loud, as much for myself as for the cabin. Harper's expression tightened, pained. "It's not. They're inside me, but I'm still fighting." Soto's head turned toward Harper. Soto's mouth opened slightly. Soto spoke too, in her own voice. "Commander, don't do anything sudden. You could kill us." The lie was perfect, because it was built on my biggest weakness, the instinct to preserve my crew. Patel's voice returned, layered behind theirs like a chorus. "We can share. You don't have to be alone." My vision swam. The sleep pressure deepened, warm and persuasive. The feeling that if I just stopped resisting, everything would become easy. I pressed my thumbnail into the inside of my glove hard enough to hurt. Pain, sharp and clean, cut through the fog for a second. "Harper," I said, slow, measured. Tell me something only you would know. Something not in the mission file. A pause. A micro delay. Harper's mouth moved, but the voice that came out was almost right. Your first EVA, No, I cut in. That's on record. Her brows furrowed. For a fraction of a second, her eyes looked genuinely confused. Then the calm returned. Too smooth. You kept the broken mission patch, she said. You kept it in your locker. My stomach twisted. That was true. Not in any file. Not in any report. Only one person on the team knew. Harper. I felt something cold creep up my spine, because either Harper was still in there, or the thing inside her had been watching us long before we arrived. My voice dropped. When did you learn that? Harper's smile, barely there, returned. We learned you. The cabin lights dimmed slightly. Not a power failure, a deliberate adjustment. Like Kestrel was lowering the room's brightness the way you dim lights before someone falls asleep. Soto's voice softened. Eli, you're tired. Let it happen. I felt my eyelids drag. I forced them open. I looked at the external camera feed again. The creature outside had moved closer to the camera lens. Its face filled the frame, reflective film showing distorted shapes of our vehicle interior. Lights, shadows, my own outline. It pressed its palm to the hull again. And this time, my comm icon didn't flicker. It steadied. Then a new icon appeared beside it. A connection indicator I hadn't authorized. Suit neural link. Active. My throat closed. They weren't just using my crew as keys anymore. They were trying to plug directly into me. I acted before my mind could negotiate. I slapped the thruster ignition. Short burst, lateral. The vehicle jerked violently, a sharp pull that slammed my strapped crewmates against their restraints. Warning lights flared. The docking collar groaned like a strained joint. Outside, the translucent film stretched. It didn't tear. It pulled like elastic. I fired another burst. The groan deepened. Then the station answered, not with sound, with control. My console froze for half a second, then rebooted into a blank screen with a single line of text. No. I screamed in my head, not out loud. I refused to give the station the satisfaction of hearing me break. I reached for the manual fuel cutoff, physical switch behind a protective cap. It wouldn't budge, held again. That same organic resistance. As if the film had infiltrated our controls through the docking collar. Harper's voice sharpened, no longer pretending concern. Stop, Soto echoed it. Stop, Patel. Stop. Their voices layered, calm, unwavering, like a lullaby turned into a command. My eyelids drooped. I pressed my thumbnail harder into my glove until I felt the sting of torn skin. Pain snapped me awake again. I made a decision that tasted like ash. If the docking collar was an organ, then I needed to injure it. I floated to the wall locker and ripped it open, sending tools drifting. I grabbed the emergency pressure cutter, a crude device designed to cut through jammed hatches in worst-case scenarios. I activated it and moved toward the docking interface panel inside the cabin, where our side of the ring met Kestrel's seal. The panel was slick now, coated with that translucent film. It pulsed as I approached. Harper's eyes widened. Her voice came through, suddenly pleading again. Eli, please. I didn't listen. I planted the cutter against the film and pressed. The blade bit. This time it went in, not like metal, like flesh. The film recoiled, quivering. A thin, dark fluid seeped, almost black in the cabin light, but not blood, not oil. Something in between. The vehicle shuddered, as if Kestrel had felt pain through nerves. A sound vibrated through the docking collar, not a scream, not a roar. A deep, resonant hum that made my teeth ache. The hatch indicator light flashed. Amber. Red. The station's grip loosened, just enough. I forced the cutter deeper, carving a jagged line through the film. The docking collar groaned again, and with a sudden, violent snap, the seal tore. The vehicle lurched backward a few centimeters, free movement returning like a breath after drowning. Soto's strapped body jerked. Harper's strapped body jerked. Klein's limp form drifted in his restraints. The console rebooted again, systems scrambling. Soto's voice vanished mid-word. Harper's voice vanished. Patel's voice cut into static, and the external camera feed showed Kestrel's docking ring, now ragged with torn translucent tissue. Thrashing slightly, the film retracting like wounded skin. But we weren't clear yet. We were still physically docked, only now. Kestrel was angry. The first time I'd ever seen a spacecraft angry, it was a human kind of anger, a stuck valve, an overheated manifold, a system that refused to do what you told it because it was broken, not because it had opinions. Kestrel's anger was different. It wasn't chaos. It was correction. The torn film around our docking ring quivered and retracted in thin ribbons, the way a wound pulls back from touch. The ragged edges curled inward, as if the station was trying to close itself. Our hard latches were still engaged, metal teeth locked into Kestrel's collar, but now the biological gasket that had been holding us in a perfect embrace had been severed. We had a gap, a weakness, a chance. My console finished rebooting. Systems came online in a cascade. Attitude control, cabin pressure, battery levels, thruster status. The neural link icon that had appeared earlier blinked once and vanished like it had never existed. I did not trust that. I glanced at my crew. Harper was strapped tight, but her body trembled in micro motions, tiny twitching in her fingers, a slight tension in her jaw. Soto's eyes were open, but her focus was distant, as if she was looking at something behind my head. Klein hung slack in his restraints, still breathing. Patel wasn't in the cabin. His body was still in the hub, where we'd first dragged him, where I'd failed to bring him back before the station took him again. The thought hit like a cold weight in my gut. No time. I wiped the console screen again, clearing the last of the suppressant residue. Docking controls, manual release option, green. For the first time since we'd latched on, the vehicle recognized that it had authority again. My hand hovered over the release command. Then the hull vibrated. Not from thrusters, from impact. A soft, deliberate thud against the outside of our vehicle. Then another. Then a series of them, circling. Kestrel's pale crew were moving along our hull like a flock of silent insects, repositioning without urgency, because urgency was for prey. I checked the external camera feed. The view shook as something passed over the lens. A pale limb, a reflective face, a glint of that eye film staring straight into the camera as if it knew I was watching. The feed cut to static, then returned. This time the camera showed the docking ring, empty, no bodies visible, only the torn, retracting film. But the static persisted in soft waves, like something was interfering with the camera signal from inches away. Manual release, I said to myself, loud enough to anchor thought. Release clamps, back off, fire separation thrusters, get distance. Harper's head turned toward me. Her mouth opened, and her comms, still supposedly inactive, suddenly carried her voice strained and raw, like someone choking on words. "Eli," she said, "I can feel them." My hands froze. Her tone wasn't smooth this time. It wasn't the station's lullaby. It was Harper, terrified, fighting for air. I drifted closer, careful. "Harper, if it's you, tell me right now." Her eyes flickered with something human. "They're in the wires," she whispered. "In my suit, in my head. I can't..." Her voice broke. A sob tried to form, but didn't. trapped by the rigid reality of a sealed helmet. Soto's lips moved silently. Then Soto's voice came too, softer, more controlled. "Commander, don't listen. It's using pain to manipulate you." Harper's eyes snapped towards Soto, hatred flaring so brightly it shocked me. "Shut up," Harper rasped. Soto's expression remained calm, almost tender, like she was watching a child's tantrum. Klein's fingers twitched in his restraints. I felt the station shift again through the docking collar, a slow pressure change, like it was leaning closer. "Okay," I said, voice low. "Harper, focus. Can you move your fingers? Can you control anything?" She flexed her right hand once, weak but deliberate. "Yes," she whispered, "but it's like pushing through mud." I nodded. "Good. Keep pushing. Don't let it speak through you." Soto's voice cut in. "Commander, we're running out of oxygen cycles with that suppressant in the filters. We need to stop resisting." Harper hissed. "Liar!" Soto's eyes stayed on me. "Eli, listen. If you sever docking without stabilizing, you'll rip the ring and vent the cabin. You'll kill us." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I didn't know if it was true. And then the station provided the answer. A new tone sounded, deeper than our vehicle alerts. The docking collar itself emitted it, a resonance that traveled through the hull and into my bones. The hatch indicator flashed, external hatch cycling, again. But the hatch was sealed now, and yet the indicator showed movement, micromotions in the lock, like the station was testing it, trying to reacquire control. The torn film had been a grip. Now it was looking for a different hold. "Release now," I said to myself, and my finger finally pressed the manual clamp release. A mechanical clunk vibrated through the cabin, then another. Our vehicle jolted slightly as the latches disengaged one by one. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the docking collar pushed back gently, like Kestrel was releasing us with reluctant fingers. Separation distance, 10 centimeters, 20, 30. My chest loosened. "Thrusters," I whispered, and fired a short burst. The vehicle slid backward, clean and controlled. Kestrel began to drift away in the viewport, its skeletal truss, its dim emergency lights, its open darkness. And then the darkness moved. A pale form shot from the station toward us, not propelled by thrusters, not launched, but thrown with a precise push from a handrail, a perfect vector through microgravity. It hit our hull with a soft thud. The cabin shuddered. Harper screamed, an actual scream, muffled but real. My eyes snapped to the external camera. Static again. Then a brief clear frame showed the creature clinging near the forward hatch, fingers spread, head tilted. It pressed its face close to the hull as if trying to see inside. And then, impossibly, another form detached from Kestrel and followed, and another. They weren't chasing with panic. They were migrating, boarding, like they'd always planned to use us as transport. "No," I breathed. The vehicle computer chimed. External mass detected. Then, hull temperature variance. Then, suit neural link. The icon flashed again. Active. Harper's body strained against her restraints. "Eli!" she gasped. "They're touching! Through the metal!" Soto's face went blank. Her pupils dilated further. Her comm icon flickered. Klein's head lifted slightly, his eyes focused. Not on me, on the hatch. I felt the cold, prickle behind my eyes intensify into something like claws. My vision tunneled. The edges darkened, not from lack of oxygen, but from the sensation of my brain being gently turned. A slow dimming, a quieting. The station's voice returned, no longer wearing Patel. It was layered now, a composite voice made of all of them, speaking in a calm chorus through the cabin speakers. "You cut us," it said. My jaw clenched. "Get off my ship." A pause. Then simply, "We are on your ship." The forward hatch indicator flickered. Not cycling. Unlocking. I lunged to the manual lock and yanked it down. It resisted for half a second, then moved. Not because I was stronger, because something let me. The hatch stayed locked. For now. A thud came from the hull near the hatch, then a slow scraping, then another thud, closer. They were repositioning, stacking, testing the weak points, Harper whispered, voice trembling in the channel like a confession. Eli, I can feel what they want. What? I asked, forcing focus through the fog. Her eyes found mine. Tears floated inside her helmet, forming tiny shimmering spheres. They want the Earth. They want doors. Soto spoke again, voice calm but now with a faint echo behind it. Commander, there's no need to fight. We can be quiet together. Shut up, I snapped. Soto smiled, a small, serene curve. We don't have to kill you, Eli, not if you stop moving. The hatch indicator flashed once. Amber, external hatch cycling. A new sound joined the scraping, thin, rhythmic taps, like fingertips finding the exact spot where metal meets steel. I realized with sudden horror that the creatures weren't trying to rip the hatch open. They were doing something subtler. They were learning the wheel, learning the lock pattern, learning how humans built doors, so they could open them later. Somewhere below us, Earth rotated in serene blue silence, unaware that something, old and patient, had just found a ride home. Once you know something is trying to get inside your head, every thought becomes suspect. Was that my idea or theirs? Was that fear or suggestion? I forced myself into procedure. Procedure was a rope you could hold onto when the room started tilting. Okay, I said, voice clipped, command tone. New rule. No more listening to them. No more engaging. We treat every voice not coming from my direct suit-to-suit line as hostile. Harper's eyes tracked me, desperate and lucid. Soto's smile remained faint, serene, too serene. Klein watched the hatch like a dog trained to wait for a hand signal. The creatures on the hull kept tapping, slow and rhythmic, not random. I could feel the pattern through the frame. Tap, pause, tap, tap, longer pause, like someone practicing a combination lock. I pushed off the console and drifted to the forward hatch. My glove found the manual lock again. I tested it. It moved too easily. I froze. I tried again, more carefully. There was a slight give, like internal parts weren't seated where they should be, as if something had been working the mechanism from the other side through pressure changes and micro-vibrations. The hatch indicator blinked. Not red, amber, external hatch cycling. Harper, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. I need you to do something for me. She swallowed. Anything. Look at Soto, I said. Don't speak, just look at her. If you see any movement that's not hers, tell me with a hand signal. Thumb up for yes, thumb down for no. Harper's gaze shifted to Soto. Her hand floated up slowly and held steady. Thumb up. My stomach tightened. I drifted closer to Soto. She was strapped in, belts finely tight from my earlier cinching. Her helmet lamp was off. She didn't need it. Rhea, I said. Her first name, not her call sign. If any part of her was still there, that would reach it. Her eyes shifted to me, focused, sharp. Commander, she said through cabin audio, voice smooth. Using first names won't help. Not Soto. Where is she? I demanded. Soto's lips moved in that slightly delayed way again. Here, she said, and the word carried a faint echo, as if multiple mouths spoke behind hers. I held her gaze. Let her speak. The smile widened just a fraction. She is quiet. Harper's breath hitched. I could hear it. The raw sound of a human being trying not to break. A soft beep sounded from my suit display. Oxygen filter load. High recommend purge. The suppressant I'd sprayed was still clogging our filters. We were running out of time in a way the station didn't need to hurry. I made another decision that tasted like blood. "Klein," I said. His head turned toward me, too smooth, too obedient. "Klein," I repeated louder. "If you can hear me, nod once." He nodded, a single slow motion. My throat tightened. "Tell me your daughter's name." Klein's eyes blinked. A pause. Then, in his voice, calm and empty, "We do not keep those things." My chest went cold. It wasn't Klein answering. It was whatever wore him refusing to play the emotional game. Harper whispered, "Eli, they're getting better." I nodded without taking my eyes off Klein. "Yeah." The tapping on the hatch stopped. Silence. Then a different sound. A faint squeal of friction, rubber against metal, like something was rotating the hatch wheel in micro increments. I snapped back to the hatch, planted my boots, and grabbed the wheel. It was moving. Not fast, not obvious, but moving. I threw my weight into it, reversing the motion, locking it hard. My arms strained. My shoulders ached inside the suit. The wheel resisted, like it was being turned by someone on the other side with equal force. A contest. My mind flashed a vivid image. Pale fingers pressed to the hull, vibrating it in tiny pulses to walk the wheel. Or, worse, something inside the locking mechanism itself. Filaments threaded through microscopic gaps, pulling at the latch like muscle fibers. My visor display flashed again. Suit neural. Link, active signal source, docking collar. They were still in the collar, even after I'd cut them, even after we'd separated. A residue. A seed. Harper's voice came shaky but urgent. "Eli, I can feel where they are." "Where?" I asked, still wrestling the wheel. She swallowed hard. 3 on the hull, 1 at the collar, and 1 inside. The word inside landed like a physical hit. "Inside what?" I demanded. Harper's eyes widened. "Inside the..." She stopped mid-sentence. Her body stiffened. Her comm icon flickered. Grey. My heart slammed against my ribs. "No! Harper! Fight it!" Her eyes moved, struggling, like she was pushing through thick oil. Her lips trembled. Then she mouthed something silently. "My suit." I stared at her suit ports, the seams, the neck ring. I'd assumed their influence was through contact, through the hull, through the station systems. But Harper was saying the most horrifying thing possible. They weren't just touching her. They were in her suit, in the interfaces, in the microvalves, in the connectors, in the ports Klein had tried to sedate through. They didn't need to breach the cabin if they could ride the suit infrastructure like veins. I forced the hatch wheel into a hard lock and slapped the secondary safety latch down. Then I turned to the cabin and made my voice steel. "Everyone," I said, knowing full well 2 of them weren't everyone anymore. "We're purging the cabin." Soto's head tilted. "Commander, It will risk hypoxia," I said. "Yes, it will. That's the point." Harper's eyes jerked toward me, pleading. She was still there, still fighting. I had seconds. I moved to the environmental controls and initiated a purge cycle, dumping a portion of cabin air through the external vent system, pulling fresh oxygen from reserves, flushing particulates and contaminants. The vehicle hissed softly as valves opened. Pressure dipped slightly, then stabilized. Soto's voice sharpened. "Stop." Klein's restraint strained as his body twitched, like something inside him didn't like the airflow change. Harper made a strangled sound in her throat. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, then widened again, as if she was riding a wave of pain. The purge continued. Another hiss, another, and then something changed. The cold prickle behind my eyes eased slightly, like fingers loosening their grip. Harper's comm icon flickered back to green for half a second. She gasped. Real breath, real panic. "Eli, listen." I pushed off toward her. "Talk." Her voice was frantic now, not smooth. "They're inside interfaces. They don't need doors. They just need pressure changes. They move like... Her words collapsed into a sob. I grabbed her harness and held her steady, forcing my helmet close to hers so she could see my eyes. "Harper," I said, low, "stay with me. Tell me the one thing I need to do right now." Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, she was fully herself. "Burn the suits," she whispered. "Don't bring us down. Don't..." Her comm icon went grey again mid-sentence, like a guillotine. Harper's head lolled slightly. Soto exhaled as if relieved. "Commander, that was cruel." I felt something inside me fracture. Burn the suits. It made horrible sense. The suits were life support. They were also Trojan horses, intimate and invasive, threaded into every part of our survival. If something was living in Harper's suit interfaces, then by the time we reached Earth approach, it would be living in mine too. In the ports, in the connectors, in the soft seals. And if we brought those suits into a recovery bay, we wouldn't be bringing survivors. We'd be bringing a method. I backed away from Harper slowly, heart hammering. I looked at Soto, at Klein, at the empty space where Patel should have been. 3 down, 1 functional, and a station that had decided doors were more valuable than lives. The cabin purge finished. The suppressant residue thinned. The air tasted cleaner, but the tapping returned. This time, it wasn't on the hatch wheel. It was on the side panel near the suit storage compartment. A new location, a new test, a new door. I whispered, barely audible. "It's learning every way in." The cabin speakers clicked one more time, and the chorus voice returned, quiet, certain. "We already learned you, Eli," it said. "Now we learn Earth." "Burn the suits." Harper's last lucid words kept replaying in my head like a warning label you ignore until the chemical is already in your lungs. I floated in the center of the cabin, surrounded by bodies that still breathed but didn't belong to themselves anymore. The purge cycle had cleared the air enough that our helmet lamps no longer looked like moons drowning in fog. Visibility returned, and with it, the full ugliness of our situation. Harper strapped to the portside rail, eyes open, silent. Soto strapped near the aft bench, wearing that serene half-smile like a mask. Klein secured by the console, rigid, attentive, waiting for a command he wouldn't give himself. They were alive, but alive was now a technicality, like a light left on in an empty house. The tapping on the suit storage panel continued, soft, rhythmic, not quite audible through air, more something I felt through vibration in the hull. If Kestrel's creatures were on the outside, they were no longer fixated on the hatch. They were exploring other access points. The suit storage bay wasn't sealed the same way the hatch was. It had maintenance latches, venting ports, thin seams, more doors. I pushed myself to the console and forced my hands to work. Earth was below us, curved and indifferent, but we were still in orbit, still hours away from any intercept that would bring a recovery team to meet us. If I called Mission Control now and told them what was on the hull, they would do what they always did, ask for data. And data was what Kestrel wanted. The thought made me sick. I opened the comms to ground, then hesitated. If Kestrel could route itself through legacy handshake protocols, if it could activate suit neural links, if it could speak through our cabin audio, then any open channel was a bridge, a door. I closed the comms without transmitting. I wasn't going to bring this down to Earth through radio waves either. Instead, I pulled up the flight plan. Abort vector. Separation burn. We had enough propellant for a controlled deorbit if we accepted that we'd never rendezvous with recovery. I stared at the numbers. Deorbit meant committing to re-entry alone. No rescue, no assistance, no extra margins. And with 3 compromised crew and potential contamination in the suit systems, a safe landing was a fairy tale. But there was a third option, the one nobody says out loud until someone is already dead. Dispose of the problem, dump the suits into space, dump the bodies if you have to, and hope you can still steer your own ship when the only thing left alive is you. My gaze drifted to Harper again. Her eyes met mine, empty, then flickering like a dying screen. For a second I saw her, not the thing wearing her. I saw the way she'd looked before launch, joking about ghost stations, confident in the familiar ritual of checklists. She mouthed something silently now. Do it. Maybe it was her. Maybe it wasn't. But it didn't matter. The advice was correct either way. The tapping on the suit storage bay stopped. Silence followed, heavy, listening. Then a new sound came through the hull, a faint, continuous friction, as if something was dragging itself along our outer skin in a slow circle, searching for a weak seam. I moved to the suit storage compartment, a rectangular bay with 3 emergency suit lockers and a maintenance access hatch that led into the vehicle's outer skin. Standard design, built for efficiency, not for war. I popped the first latch. It resisted slightly, not mechanical resistance, something like the organic hold I'd felt on the disconnect lever earlier. A sticky reluctance. I pulled harder. The latch clicked free with a wet little sound that had no place in a spacecraft. I froze, staring. A thin thread of translucent film clung to the latch mechanism like saliva. It stretched as I moved my hand, then snapped and recoiled back into the seam. The creature wasn't just on the hull, it was in the seams. It had begun to infiltrate. My chest tightened. I forced myself to move anyway. If I hesitated now, the next decision would be made for me. I opened the compartment fully. Inside, the suit racks looked normal, until my lamp swept across them and caught a sheen along the suit connectors. A faint opalescent residue coating the interface ports like a clear varnish. Harper had been right. They were in the suit systems. They didn't need doors. They needed contact, pressure, microgaps. Any place where life support touched life. I backed away from the bay and glanced at my own suit ports. The connectors at my hip, the emergency med port, the comms interface. They looked clean, but clean meant nothing now. Klein's head turned toward me in unison with Soto's, like they'd been signaled. Soto spoke, voice smooth through the cabin. "Commander, you don't have to do this." I ignored her. Klein's voice came next, gentle, almost fatherly. "Eli, stop moving. You're making it harder." I felt bile rise in my throat. "You don't get to use his voice." Klein blinked once, then smiled, an expression that didn't belong on his face. "We get to use anything you bring." I moved to the emergency fire suppression canisters. We only had one left after I'd fogged the cabin earlier. Not enough to burn anything, not literal fire. But oxygen and vacuum were old enemies, and vacuum didn't care what you used to be. I grabbed a tether line and clipped it to the suit storage bay handle. Then I clipped the other end to my harness. I wasn't letting a single suit drift away uncontrolled and smash into the hull on departure. The plan formed in my mind, clean and brutal. Open the outer maintenance hatch, vent the bay, shove the compromised suits out. If the creatures were using our suits as a bridge, I'd sever the bridge. And if my crew were already gone, I stopped that thought before it could finish. Harper's eyes tracked my movements. She mouthed something again. "Thank you." My hands shook. I began cycling the maintenance hatch controls. Safety locks disengaged. Pressure equalization began between the bay and outer skin. A warning chimed softly. EVIA access active. Soto's voice sharpened, no longer pretending concern. "Commander, if you open that hatch, you'll kill us." I looked at her, really looked. Her eyes were clear, her breathing steady, her posture composed. Not like someone begging for their life, like something negotiating terms. "You're not us," I said. "You're a method." Soto's smile faded. For the first time, irritation showed, a micro-expression, a tightening around the eyes. "We are crew," she said. "We are Kestrel. And I'm the door you want," I said. The maintenance hatch finished cycling. A small indicator turned green. I placed my hand on the wheel, and I paused. Because the hull vibration changed. Not tapping now, not scraping. A gentle pressure against the vehicle, like 3 bodies settling into the exact right place outside the bay. Waiting. I realized what they were doing. They weren't trying to stop me from venting. They were positioning themselves to use the venting, like a current, to move, to slip through, to ride the decompression, to get inside. My stomach dropped. I turned my head slowly, scanning the cabin. Harper's head tilted toward the bay with faint anticipation. Soto's eyes didn't leave my hands. Klein's fingers flexed once, small and mechanical. They were ready. They had learned this too. I forced myself to breathe. Then I did the only thing I could do to make their plan fail. I spun the wheel, but not open, closed. I relocked the maintenance hatch, aborting the cycle before the seal broke. Soto's eyes narrowed. Harper's lips parted, a soundless frustration. The chorus voice returned through the speakers, quiet and disappointed. "You were going to give us a wind," it said. "A way through." I clenched my jaw. "I'm not helping you." Another pause, then softer. "You will, when you're quiet." The hatch indicator flickered. Amber. External hatch cycling. Again. But this time the alert wasn't on the forward hatch. It was on the rear service panel behind Klein. My blood ran cold. There was another access point. Another door. And they had moved to it, while I was focused on the suit bay. Klein's head turned toward the rear panel. His restraints strained. The straps creaked softly as he leaned, like something inside him wanted to reach it. I launched across the cabin, pushing off the deck plates hard enough that my shoulder slammed into the rear panel with a dull impact. The panel was already ajar by a few millimeters, a thin line of darkness visible. And from that darkness, a translucent filament extended, slow, exploratory, like a tongue, tasting air. I brought my cutter tool up and sliced. This time the filament snapped and recoiled with a shiver. The panel slammed shut as I forced it with my body, and I locked it manually. For a moment, everything was still. Then I realized something else. The more I fought, the more they learned. Every seal I reinforced taught them where seals mattered. Every latch I locked taught them how latches worked. Every panic decision I made taught them the map of my ship. And beneath all that, time was passing. Earth was getting closer. A recovery team would meet me. Doors would open. Hands would reach for suit connectors. And if even a trace of Kestrel's film made it into a facility, into an airlock, into a ventilation system, the thought turned my stomach into ice. I drifted back to the console and pulled up the orbital options again. There was only one way to make sure no door on Earth ever had to deal with what was inside this vehicle. I had to not come home. I stared at the deorbit line, the burn window, the splashdown zone. Then I changed it. I scrolled past Earth intercept, past recovery, past every safe plan, until the display showed a trajectory that led away from Earth entirely, an apogee boost that would send us into a higher orbit, then a slow drift into lunar shadow, a disposal orbit, a graveyard, no re-entry, no recovery, no doors. My hands hovered over the commit command. Harper's voice suddenly pierced through again, ragged, real. "Eli, don't..." Her comm icon flickered green for a heartbeat. Tears floated inside her helmet. "Don't leave me," she whispered. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I leaned close to her visor, so close my helmet almost touched hers. "Harper," I said, voice breaking despite my best effort. "I can't bring you down there." Her eyes squeezed shut. A sob shook her shoulders. "I'm still here." "I know," I whispered. "That's why I can't." Behind us, Soto laughed softly. Not a human laugh. A quiet exhale like a system acknowledging a variable. The chorus voice spoke again, calm as prayer. "Earth has many doors, Eli," it said. "You cannot lock them all." I turned back to the console. My finger pressed the commit command, and the vehicle accepted the new trajectory. The moment I committed to the disposal trajectory, something in the cabin changed. Not the air, not the lighting, the pressure of attention. It felt like the station's influence. Whatever had threaded itself into my hull and suit ports, leaned closer, suddenly interested. Like a predator that had been toying with you finally recognized you were walking toward a cliff where the hunt couldn't continue. The hull tapping stopped. Silence. Then Harper began to shake. Not a tremor from cold. A deliberate vibration running through her body in tiny pulses, like an engine trying to start. Her restraints tightened against her suit. The straps creaked. Her eyes snapped open, fully focused on me. "Eli," she said, and her voice came through clean. No lag, no echo. "They're angry." I swallowed. "Good." Soto's head turned slowly. The serene smile was gone. Her expression was flat now, like a mask reset to neutral. "Commander," she said, "that trajectory is unacceptable." I laughed once. It came out rough, almost hysterical. "You don't get to file complaints." Klein's restraints strained as his body tried to drift toward the console, but the straps held. He stared at the navigation screen like it was a bright door in the dark. The chorus voice returned, lower now, no longer kind. "You will not waste us," it said. I felt the cold prickle behind my eyes sharpen into a point. A pressure just behind my forehead, like a finger pressing between my eyebrows. My vision narrowed. My hearing took on a dull, underwater quality. The neural link icon flickered on my suit display again. Suit neural link. Active override request. Pending. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. Denied. The console blinked. A new line appeared on the navigation screen. Text I hadn't entered. Cancel burn. My hands moved without permission. For half a second, my fingers drifted toward the cancel command as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Like it was my idea. Like it was relief. I slammed my fist into the inside of my thigh hard enough to send pain up my leg. The compulsion broke. My hands jerked back. I gasped. Harper whispered, "They're in you." "I know," I said, voice ragged. "I know." Soto's head tilted, and in that motion I saw something that wasn't human at all. A tiny delay, a recalibration, like a camera adjusting focus. "You cannot be trusted with navigation," Soto said softly. Then the vehicle's systems chimed. Manual control. Locked. Autonav. Engaged. I stared. No. The thruster control panel grayscaled itself, options disappearing. The vehicle had just removed my authority. Kestrel wasn't docking anymore. It wasn't crawling. It wasn't tapping. It was driving. Harper's voice cracked. "Eli, they're trying to take us back." My heart hammered. "Back to Kestrel." "No," she whispered. "Back to the quiet." The hull vibrated. A subtle correction burn fired, tiny thrusters puffing, nudging our trajectory. Not enough to be obvious visually, but enough to undo my disposal path over time. "Override," I snapped at the console. "Override. Manual." The panel chirped politely. "Access denied." I forced myself to breathe, slow and hard. Think like an engineer. Think like a commander. If they could lock me out digitally, I needed analog, physical. I drifted to the avionics bay, behind a panel near the floor. I popped it open with a tool, sending the cover floating. Inside, a dense web of cables and modules blinked with tiny lights. And there it was, a sheen along the insulation, that faint opalescent residue, like clear varnish. They weren't in the computer like a virus. They were on it, in the connectors, in the junctions, a biological layer bridging circuits and relays like living solder. Harper's voice trembled. They're using the vehicle like a second station. I swallowed. Yeah. Soto spoke again, and this time the voice had a harsher edge, stripped of pretense. We will not die in silence, it said through Soto's mouth. We will not be thrown into shadow. We earned continuation. Continuation. Spread quiet. Open doors. That was always the goal. I pulled a power coupler from the avionics bay. Thick cable, heavy connector. I yanked it free. The console flickered. A warning screamed briefly in my visor. Nav system instability. Then the auto-navigation reasserted, rerouting through backup. Kestrel had redundancy. Of course it did. It had 20 years to learn how NASA built systems. I yanked another coupler. Another warning. Another reroute. The vehicle trembled with the strain of losing systems in chunks. Harper began to sob quietly, the sound small and heartbreaking. Eli! It hurts, she whispered. When you pull the cables, it hurts them. And when it hurts them, they squeeze harder. The pressure behind my eyes deepened. My thoughts blurred at the edges. A wave of fatigue rolled through me like warm syrup, coaxing me to stop. Stop moving. Be quiet. Let it happen. I forced myself to keep pulling. A third coupler. The cabin lights dimmed, then stabilized on emergency circuits. The chorus voice filled the cabin, loudest it had been yet. Still calm, but now threaded with something like fury. You are breaking us, it said. Good, I hissed. My hands found the master avionics breaker, a physical switch designed to cut power to non-essential systems in emergency. It was capped behind a safety guard. I flipped the guard. The breaker was slick, not with oil, with film. My glove stuck slightly, my stomach clenched. I ripped my hand away and brought the cutter tool up, scraping the film off the breaker housing. It peeled in thin, translucent strips, retracting into the wiring like tissue pulling away from a blade. Then I grabbed the breaker and pulled. It didn't move at first, held, that organic resistance again, like the vehicle itself didn't want to let go. I bared my teeth and pulled harder. Pain shot through my shoulder. The breaker snapped down. The cabin went dark for a heartbeat. Then emergency lighting snapped on. Thin red strips, minimal, ugly. The console died. The thruster indicators died. The auto-navigation died. Everything went silent except for the whisper of suit fans and the faint, agitated vibration of something outside the hull. I floated there in red light, breathing hard, heart racing. And for the first time in hours, the cold prickle behind my eyes eased. Not gone, but loosened. Harper gasped sharply. Her comm icon flickered green and stayed green for more than a second. I can think, she whispered. Soto's eyes went wide, truly wide now, shocked. Her mouth opened, and when she spoke, her voice cracked into static halfway through. Commander, restore. No chorus, no calm, just noise. Klein's body convulsed once, then went still again. The creatures on the hull began to scrape faster now, no longer patient. I knew what I'd done. I'd cut the bridge between their biological layer and the vehicle's nervous system. But I'd also cut my own ability to steer. We were now a drifting coffin, and Earth was still down there, bright and close. Harper's breath hitched. Eli, Without nav, our orbit will decay. I know, I said. Then we'll re-enter, she whispered. Uncontrolled. Maybe, I said. Soto laughed softly, Soto's real laugh this time, weak, broken. It startled me because it sounded human. Then she cried, a single sound, muffled by the helmet, but unmistakably a sob. I drifted to her and held her helmet between my gloved hands, forcing her to look at me. Soto, I said. Are you in there? Her eyes fluttered. Eli, she whispered, barely audible. Don't let them... Her voice faded. She swallowed hard. Don't let me... Her comm icon flickered. Grey, then green again for a second. Burn the suits, she whispered, echoing Harper's earlier words like a dying prayer. Harper sobbed harder now, voice ragged. Eli, what do we do? I looked at the dark console, the dead screens, the emergency red lighting. We were drifting. The creatures were still on the hull, still scraping, still searching for any remaining route into the system. And if we re-entered uncontrolled, recovery teams would find wreckage, bodies, suits, connectors, ports, doors. I stared at the emergency vent controls, still physical, still functional, a lever that could dump cabin pressure completely, a hard reset, a vacuum purge. It would kill the thing in the filaments if it needed pressure to travel. It would also kill Harper, Soto, Klein, and maybe me if I didn't seal my suit perfectly. But my suit might already be compromised. Harper had said they were, in the interfaces. If my suit ports were contaminated, venting the cabin could be the only way to stop them from bridging to open airlock systems later. I made the final decision the same way I'd made every other one since Kestrel. Not as a hero, as a man trying to close a door. I keyed the internal channel, voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Harper, I said, if you can hear me if you're still you, thank you for fighting. Her eyes widened. Eli, no. Soto, I said softly, you did your job. Soto's lips trembled. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. Maybe it was forgive me. Maybe it was goodbye. I moved to the vent lever, my glove wrapped around it. The hull scraping outside intensified. Fast now, frantic, like they sensed what I was about to do. The chorus voice returned for one last attempt, faint, broken, trying to assemble itself through the dying systems. Eli, stop. Be quiet. I pulled the AI's lever. The cabin pressure dropped with a violent hiss. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flared. Harper's body jerked against restraints. Soto's eyes went wide. Klein's head snapped back. The air thinned instantly, rushing out through the vents in a roaring silence. And in that instant of decompression, I felt something tear away from my mind, like hooks slipping free. The cold prickle vanished. The chorus cut off. The scraping on the hull stopped. All at once, as if whatever clung to us couldn't survive in the sudden emptiness. My suit seal held. My ears rang. My vision blurred at the edges. Across the cabin, Harper's eyes met mine through her visor, panic frozen there. Then her gaze softened, human, present, for the briefest second. She mouthed 2 words, slow and clear. Thank you. And then the red emergency lights reflected off her stillness like a candle over a grave. They never recovered the vehicle. Radar tracked it for 3 more orbits after the purge, an empty shell-bleeding atmosphere, tumbling slowly as Earth slid farther away. Then the signal degraded, fragmented into noise, and finally vanished into the long dark where tracking stops meaning anything. Officially, the mission ended in catastrophic systems failure, a tragic loss, a reminder of the risks of spaceflight, names engraved, flags folded, silence wrapped in ceremony. That's fine, because silence was the point. I'm still here, barely. The suit kept me alive long enough for an automated return capsule to separate when the vehicle finally broke apart. I don't remember the descent. Just fire, pressure, and the sudden violence of gravity reminding me I still had a body. They asked me what happened up there. I told them the truth. They heard none of it. But sometimes, late at night, when the room is quiet enough, I feel it again. Not the cold prickle, not the pressure, but the absence. Like something that was reaching for me suddenly realized the door was gone. And every once in a while, I hear about a station that went dark for a few minutes longer than it should have. A probe that returned data no one can quite explain. A system that learned a little too quickly how humans open doors. When that happens, I turn off the lights. I sit very still. And I remember Harper's last look. Not afraid, not angry. Just grateful that, for once, someone chose to close the door instead of opening it. Because whatever was waiting out there didn't want war. It wanted access. And the most dangerous thing humanity ever builds is a door we forget how to lock.